Back and bon appetit, everyone. Hope you're enjoying your meal. So we're going to go ahead and jump into our keynote session. We are lucky to have back with us Robert LaMagna-Reiter. He comes from WoodmenLife, is Vice President and Chief Information Security Officer. Rob, you've been with us a few times, I know, and we're always lucky to have you when we have some of your very valuable, precious time. Rob is a leading trusted information security risk management professional, as a CISO for WoodmenLife. They've got that beautiful tower over in Omaha. He leads information security strategies and roadmaps, oversees cyber risk management, security architecture and engineering, and security operations. That's a mouthful. Leveraging more than 20 years of experience, Rob helps others deliver value through proper security strategy aligned to zero trust principles. His experience includes leadership roles in information security for transportation, government communications, retail, e-commerce, managed services, SaaS and insurance industries. That's quite a cocktail. He's a Team 8 villager and serves as an advisory board president for Soft Warfare, Zero Trust Initiative leader for the Cyber Theory Institute, and Zero Trust expert committee member for the Cloud Security Alliance. When do you sleep?
Sometimes.
Yeah. But I'm going to hand over this hour. Thank you for being here to keynote with us, Rob. You will take us through with your hour, recalibrate your thinking, overcoming bias to build proactive, trust-centered security programs. A round of applause for our friend Rob.
Cool. Thank you very much. Now let's keep that applause going. Thank you for the FutureCon team for everything that they do and all of our vendor sponsors here today. Thank you. I'm excited to talk with everyone today about something that you already have with you. It costs you nothing. I don't think any of the vendors next door can say that. Nothing against our vendors. I love everything that they offer us, but what I'm offering you is free. You carry it around with you. You were born with it. It's up here. We're going to discuss perspectives today. That's not about tech stacks or threat models so that we can calm down your feeds. I'm not going to be talking about any 0 days. Everything today we talk about is how we think, how we communicate. And we're going to drive into how that intersects with security and our risk behavior, why we often get it wrong despite the best intentions, and how we can make slightly better choices in the right direction in an irrational world. That's what we're going to cover today. We can skip this because we just finished that, and we'll jump right in. In order to talk about how we recalibrate our thinking a little bit, we need to understand, gosh, what is Rob talking about? Where is he pulling all of this information from? How did he form his opinions, and what is it grounded in? We'll start with the foundation of changing thinking, and that's rooted in behavioral economics. It's this field that combines insights from psychology and economics to understand how people make decisions. Because largely, people are very intelligent, very friendly, but we make a lot of irrational decisions that go against rational models, right, and logic thinking. And so rather than assuming that we always make logical choices that maximize self-interest, right, so thinking back to your economics days, maximizing marginal utility, no, we're talking about people are influenced by a lot of things. Your cognitive biases, emotions, social factors, mental shortcuts, you name it, right? And these are not bad things. It's just a formulation of all of our lived experiences. Wow, there we go. Leave it to me to break the laptop. So, for example, we tend to value sometimes immediate rewards versus future benefits. That's something that they call present bias. Why we overreact to a potential loss, right? The sky is falling when a CVSS 9.9 comes out, right? The sky is falling. We got to immediately take action. And why we're influenced by how choices are presented, which is referred to as the framing effect. If I tell you that there's going to be a 30% chance that something is going to impact us to the degree of $1 million of loss, that has a different effect than me saying, yeah, there's a 70% chance that we're okay and we don't have anything to worry about. How you frame and set the foundation for how you talk about a subject makes more difference than the actual subject matter itself. So these insights help explain why real-world behaviors in areas like spending, savings, health, even information security show it's less about maximizing value and more about managing perception, habit, and context. Traditional information security, I think, has failed a lot of us. But it's not failure in terms of going down the wrong path or failure in terms of not knowing what to do. It's that our risk meters were broken through education, through boot camps, through certification. We are taught not to fail. The bad guys only need to get it right once. We can never get it wrong, right? Failure is wrong in our world. Well, actually, we need to rewire ourselves to fail. Maybe not fail in production all the time, right? Not fail where it matters, but fail as we ideate, as we evolve. One of the things that we don't lack today is it's not a lack of tools. It's not a lack of talent. It's the fact that many of our programs and our mindsets and how we're taught are just stuck in this defensive mode. We get good at responding to incidents. We get really good at logging tickets, and we get really good at showcasing why we need to continue spending money on a security program. But do we really show that we're adding value and moving the program forward? We struggle to evolve. That's because we've been conditioned to how we've been conditioned to think, how we've been conditioned to talk and act. I mean, we go our entire lives through an educational system and boot camps that drill into you how to follow a certain methodology, and then all of a sudden you get into the real world or you get into some college courses and they're like, go break stuff, right? Go fail fast, adopt all these principles on operating very nimbly, and it goes against everything we've been taught. I mean, how many of you have taken a certification where you know how things work in the real world, but obviously you have to throw that out the window and just articulate what a certification vendor says? We're taught to avoid that at all costs, but we got to explore what's possible. One of the most important principles is it's not what you say, it's how you say it. This holds true in information security almost more than a lot of other fields, right? To make an impact, we need to set an example and take a lead. To do this, we need to understand that our strategies that we lead with in our programs, again, which are all very well intended, they're often shaped by deep human biases. We gravitate towards what we believe. So depending on who has mentored me, depending on what we've been taught in our education system, depending on how we perceive risks and threat and the tolerance by the organization, we double down on those past decisions and what we've been taught, even when they're not working, right? Even when we have the same conversations over and over. And we resist new paths because it feels less risky, right? Uncertainty scares us sometimes, right? We're taught to manage risk. We're not taught to operate in ambiguity, but that's the problem. In complex environments like security, clinging to what is familiar over the last 30, 35 years actually causes us to miss what is essential. And to recalibrate, we need to identify these patterns. And so the first one we'll talk about is this thing called framing bias. So again, we talked about the way information is presented, which is usually called the frame. It impacts how we interpret and react to information. So in the information security context, when we talk about risk exposure or attack surface, you can start rephrasing those as to, hey, we want to gain additional customers, expand the business. Sure, the attack surface could be infinitely expanding. The more areas your business wants to move into geographically or digitally, you're theoretically continuing to expand your exposure. But the gain, the enablement that your organization gains from that, how do we just maintain that at a pace in which security does not need to grow as fast, or we can retool in a greenfield methodology how we're going to meet the challenge, right? So reframing attack surface or the unknowns into something like, yeah, that's manageable, and we're going to attack it with a degree of certainty, but these are the assumptions that you need to make to come along with me on this journey. This thing like confirmation bias is the tendency to favor information that supports our existing beliefs while discounting information that challenges them. So a good example of this, and I think a lot of us have felt this on a day-to-day basis, could be a security team investing in a tool, continuing to double down on a tool or a platform or process because we believe it's working. And one of my favorite ones to beat up on is the wonderful SIM, right? Everybody loves their SIM, right? Raise a hand if you love SIM. Couple of hands, kind of, sort of, right? We get this false sense of assurance that the SIM is working because it's generating data, it's helping us generate tickets. And I think over time, a lot of organizations have put enough duct tape, have put enough process overhaul, stitching things together, that it's kind of sort of giving us things to work on and invest in. But generally, I haven't met many programs where you have resounding confirmation that the thing is working to the degree and value at which we want it to be. So we continue investing time and money into reworking that tool, even when incident or user data or the outcomes don't suggest that it's working, instead of going back to the drawing board and identifying, gosh, is this a process overhaul issue? What are we really trying to achieve? Do I really need a full-blown SIM, or can I attack this problem in a different way, right? It's not saying go out and rip out your SIMs, although I would argue for that in a lot of places, but it's how do you achieve the same outcome with a different methodology or process? There's a lot of ways to skin that cat, but that work, that ambiguity, goes against that confirmation bias that I was taught. Yeah, I need a SIM or I need a logging solution, whether it was because of a regulatory requirement or that's just how we've done it before, right? And so we're invested in that. Other examples could be when breach or anomalous information comes up, we might fixate on looking for very similar indicators or fixate looking for very similar information because it looks a lot like the last breach. We could be missing root cause or other human behavior pieces because we are confirming what we think we know up front. So the confirmation bias leads to an underestimating of emerging threats sometimes over time. When we start looking at recalibrating thinking, we want to recognize just bits and pieces like this, right? I encourage you after this to follow up looking at some of the works from maybe like Danny Kahneman, one of the behavioral economists, or Katie Milkman, and just diving into how in the world of biases, what can we identify and take back, creating space for critical thinking, using structured feedback loops, and looking for diverse perspectives. Because without doing that, most roads do lead to misalignment and frustration. Overspending on low-impact technology when it's really a process and standard work issue. Sometimes we undervalue the governance, the architecture, and digital trust, and we default to that control-first thinking, right? Controls do not effectively allow us to do our job correctly. We have to create an environment where our employees, users, partners see security as a partner, not an obstacle. We don't want to erode trust. We've eroded trust a long time. Not intentionally, of course, but because we don't do a great job communicating what we're trying to achieve. And when people don't trust security, they route around us, right? That was more so true or evident, right, when artificial intelligence first came out. A lot of organizations just put the kibosh on it and blocked it because they didn't understand it. And what's the first thing all of our users did, right? They did what Rob did, and he just subscribed to multiple, personal artificial intelligence assistants on his phone, right? And he's going around controls. A lot of our employees were doing that instead of enabling the organization. So this creates a vicious cycle. We create more controls around symptoms. Users get around it, adversaries get around it. It's not a tech problem. It's a trust problem. It's a human engagement problem. And the reason why that's such a big problem is because it's a very foreign concept for us. I mean, I don't know how many of us ever were instructed through our degree programs or a certification or a mentor that said you need to focus 80% more on the relationship building and the networking with who you have to get work done than the actual technology, and you need to rethink the problems. That trust is rooted, that the problem in trust with your peers is rooted in how we think. It's a controls-first culture that leads to slow delivery and limited user trust. It is a networking and relationship culture that leads to effective controls that are more aligned to where data sits in your organization, and retweaking that for how your unique cultures, your teams, and how your organization operates. That is the challenge, because a control, you can follow a control and say, yeah, I'm going to go after that. That's easy to implement, and I can make that mold to my business. I can't sit here and give you a list of things to go do and implement in an organization because people are hard. We're rational, and you have to get to understand and talk and ignore business for a little bit when you build those relationships for it to work. And I'm going to say a couple things here that may sit well or may not sit well with folks in here, but hear me out. Generally, I think through some experience and through some wins that emotions are one of the obstacles in long-term decision-making. Now, I'm not saying emotions are bad. I'm not saying you need to be cold and only look at data. Emotions do have their role, right? For most people, we want to fall in love with someone. You want to enjoy poetry. You want to go to a museum and enjoy art. You want to find something that you enjoy and take to heart. It's not as if I think that we should eliminate emotions. But guess what? There are very many topics where emotions do not help us, and information security is generally one of them. Emotions are not designed to achieve and solve long-term consequences. If you look at strategies and decisions in security, emotions derail us almost every time. We get very upset when somebody discounts us or tells us we're wrong, right? Not knocking on any of my peers in the networking space, right? But security and network have sometimes not seen eye to eye on how severe issues or incidents are, right? Or even cloud teams. Those emotions derail how we bring up and solve problems in standard work. And they derail us almost every time because we don't have reliable and actionable information to leverage. And that's where the data-driven decision-making comes in. So how do we recalibrate? It starts with shifting our orientation. Instead of designing our controls and our programs for threats, we design for trust, or the ability to generate levels of trust in that zero trust aligned world, right? When people need to do their job safely and effectively, instead of rigid controls, you build adaptive guardrails, you build indicators, you build flexible programs that instead of waiting for alerts, we guide the behavior, right? It doesn't mean we abandon risk. I love risk management. That's why we do what we do. We do it to manage risk in a way that we are delivering more risk reduction or value than the organization spends in our salaries, our tools, you name it. We want to be effective by aligning with how the organization functions, and that's also what makes it very difficult and ambiguous, because our organizations have very many different processes that are either revenue producing or they're built because the organization needs us at some costs, and we need to take that to heart and understand how to drive controls into each of one of those processes. And we don't want security being framed as a necessary evil. We want to help others understand why I'm even here. A good example of that is a couple of weeks ago, we held a retreat with different functions at our organization that aren't closely connected, but we all have similar and shared missions. We took some of our wealth management and financial advisors, our facilities and physical security folks, my team, our enterprise risk management, business continuity, and they're closely enough related, we were able to build a lot of trust and respect with each other when we talked about the challenges with each of us are working. We did this off-site. We got to know each other a little better. We did some quizzes together. We did some random questions. Building that camaraderie, understanding that we're not all that different, and then bringing it back to the common mission and goals, right? It's those type of activities that help us have the hard conversations. And security is also not just about keeping the bad actors out, right? That's a side effect of creating an environment where our users, partners, employees feel safe, sharing information, building and engaging. Security is a market signal, right? When we are talking internally, for example, when we're trying to sell and build an identity and access management program, which at my organization, that is one of the things that we're working intently on right now, overhauling and modernizing that. We didn't sell it by saying, yeah, I need to update my roles and my permissions, I need to set up personas, I need to set up hierarchies. I didn't sell any of the technical jargon. I said, well, we just need to control who sees what at the right times for the right reason. And I can deliver you anywhere between a 50 and 60% reduction in the number of misaligned access, or I can help you provision sales folks in half the time. Right? When you start speaking to the right audiences and telling them how they're going to benefit, one of the most difficult parts in an organization is not just the provisioning of movers, joiners, leavers. It's all in the back end to all the audit, the access control, all of the appropriateness reviews. We want to make sure that we're leading with efforts to improve processes on ways that folks are going to benefit and show them how they're going to benefit. Start thinking about user experience and customer experience. It shows that security is doing their job when we're invisible, right? But when we're not doing our job, when we're built upon misaligned frameworks, it really is noticeable, right? How many times have you tried to log into something and the single sign-on solution hasn't adequately passed the authentication token, right? Or is broken and you're not allowed to get into your application? Was that because the technology failed, the process failed? What was the underlying issue there? we want to make sure that as security is partnering with our business partners, anything that we're putting in our digital workflows is built resilient and can foster a positive customer experience. I also believe in order to recalibrate our thinking, we need to take what has historically been talked about as this attack surface, which is continuously expanding, right? Quick show of hands, everybody's been sold something that is built on like solving the ever-growing attack surface, right? Yes? Yes? Well, this will never work. It's kind of like security. Security kind of sort of works, but in order to secure something, you need to secure the whole thing. And by securing the whole thing, that means it's got to be free from vulnerability, you know all the variables. This is unsolvable, which is why it's a good revenue stream for a lot of partners and providers. I believe that you need to move away from something that is infinite, like the attack surface, to a protect surface. You can measure what truly matters, and by moving to something like a protect surface, where you're looking at data, applications, assets, services, and identities, now all of a sudden when you're talking to your business partners, your stakeholders, you can have a conversation on what you're trying to solve. You're not just trying to keep bad guys out, you're not trying to keep threats out, you're not trying to solve for the unknown. What we are actually trying to do with our thinking in a security program is, I know what good looks like, and I know how my organization operates. I know what a business process does, and if I don't, I need to start building my knowledge. But you can start coding controls and gauges of trust in your organization and monitor how business processes operate aligned to these different areas. You might not be able to get it all out of the gate, but if you start approaching that methodology, you're going to be able to make more pragmatic and practical decisions and be able to ignore a lot of the fluff in our programs that don't truly add value. And it's going to allow you to be more defensible and measurable. Switching gears a little bit, I mentioned at the beginning that to do all of this, you get to use what's freely given to you, and that's up here in your mind. But let's talk about that for a little bit. Let's think of our mind as maybe a vintage Swiss Army knife, right? There's two parts to that, right? I said vintage and I said Swiss Army knife. Let's start with the knife. As a metaphor, a knife's not really good for anything, right? There's not a single task that comes to mind where like you can immediately think, oh yeah, I'm gonna go get a knife and solve that, right? Oh, I wanna go open a, you usually think about tasks as, oh, I want to go do something. Like I wanna go open a can, for example. Or I want to go, solve this math problem. Well, we go to the solution immediately. The knife, the Swiss Army knife, by itself isn't really good for anything. Its greatness is that it's just okay at a lot of things, and you can carry it with us, right? Sure, there might be some special variations of a Swiss Army knife that are more primed for certain tasks, and that's okay, but our brain is very similar to that. Right? Our brain is a decision-making mechanism that's very similar to a Swiss Army knife. It's not really great or fantastic at one or two things. It's quite good in a lot of things. And we carry it with us all the time. That's our benefit. And what we can do about that is we need to not wedge ourselves into silos, not wedge ourselves into becoming experts at just a single thing. So bringing that back to the storytelling, design changes, designing for credibility, we need to broaden our perspectives, broaden how we communicate. That allows you to take out of your, you might be an expert in vulnerability management, application security, you might be an expert in network engineering, but that does not ignore our responsibility for having to have a broader understanding of how that integrates to the rest of our security team, as well as the organization on how we are going to communicate and solve my problem, but be curious and have accountability for problems that are adjacent to make me a more effective information risk practitioner. And that's how programs and teams need to continue to recalibrate. Those are the types of things that we're doing at our organization as well. And we're seeing a phenomenal uptick in both employee satisfaction, engagement, starting conversations, and getting buy-in for initiatives that several years ago were unheard of. Okay, so recall again the last slide where we were talking about that Swiss Army knife metaphor. And we talked about our brain being a decision-making mechanism. But this brain, it's evolved. This brain was evolved and started and was required in an environment That looks very different from today's environment, doesn't it? We actually have a tool up here that was designed to deal with things like snakes and other predators, right? Thinking back to how humans evolved. This tool helps us deal with hunger, social pressure, trust, betrayal, all of those little things that we were grown to process and store. Now, we don't have a tool up here that was designed inherently to deal with cyber risk. Cyber risk hasn't been around long enough for the human brain to evolve to think about that, understand how to handle that like we do when we see something dangerous out in the wild. I mean, we have a Swiss Army knife in an environment that requires different tools, right? Think about that for a second. We're not even talking about more recent advancements like social media and AI and all the weird implications that they've made for how we think about our jobs. Just in the cyber world, we're not calibrated to solve the problems that we're taught to solve. So it's kind of like in the physical world, we don't tell people just manage, right? So a good example of this is when you're tired, we have chairs. Go sit. When you're tired of standing, go sit, right? So we have ways to solve that. If you want to, follow me back home to Omaha after this, I'm not going to ask you to walk to Omaha. I'm going to say you can get in a car. I think you can probably even take a plane over to Omaha. So we build things that take this frail human body and help enable it to go do things that we normally can't do, right? We haven't done that with cyber. We have a lot of tools that help us accomplish what we think we want to accomplish, but we haven't applied the critical thinking to the problems that we're actually trying to solve, and we've outsourced a lot of that thinking to our vendor partners, which they have their place. They do a fantastic job when we need them, but we need to focus in on those processes and standard work and truly building the controls in our environment to make those solutions that they offer us as effective as they can be. I do have a caveat, right? Despite this brain being free, despite us moving down this journey on overcoming bias, despite us moving towards this proactive security posture in our programs, proactive does not mean predictive. You're still going to have to build in resilience. We're still going to have to deal with issues that come every once in a while, right? Predictive implies certainty. We know nothing is certain. But proactive means we are deliberately reducing ambiguity. Now, that's powerful, right? There's value in posture tuning, measuring, performing simulations, and doing rehearsals, right? So there's how we start to build that value from making that switch. In the mental world, it's the same thing. We say, oh, you can't calculate risk and measure what matters. But let's help you, right? We don't inherently have the tools for this, so let's talk about how to accomplish this a little bit. Let's walk this journey together. Do we even talk to folks? I mean, do we all go to our network team, our operations team? At my organization, one of my, I would call best friends now, is between our operations and finance groups, right? Those are some of the hardest folks to get along with. But we got to walk that journey together. We don't help each other make a better decision sometimes. Sometimes we say, well, I'm going to make the better decision for me. I'm going to CYA, right? That's the notion that we get from a lot of the lawsuits that you hear in the news, or that's how you're told sometimes your organization. Always use CYA, always do your documentation, always make the better decision for yourself and your team self, because at the end of the day, that's all you have to count upon. And I'm here to tell you, even though there might be slivers of truth in the CYA, it's not just us. We have to help each other make better decisions holistically. And once we understand how likely we are to fail together, just as we fail in the physical world, just as I might stub my toe up here or fall off the stage, we start building better work and standard processes, as in, hey, we built stairs up to the stage so I don't have to fall. We're going to build inroads and intake work and ways to solve common problems and align capacity with other teams, right? Some groups may operate in an agile format, couple-week sprints, one-week sprints. Others might operate with waterfall. Others might operate Kanban. Those inherently have priorities working in all different places, right? Your planning might be off. Your time throughout the year delivering objectives might be off. It's our responsibility to align the right times and the calendars and the capacity so that we're marching towards the right path. And the hope is that we evolve those processes, standards, and communication to accomplish this. Building in how we do adaptive policies and standards, making it simple. I don't know about you. I'm not a fan of a security policy that's more than a page or two. We also eat our own dog food. We've went through an effort over the last year to consolidate. I want to say my team historically had 30 or 40 different policies and standards, and now we have one. That's bliss. I love that. And now I can search that. It's even more possible by some of the small language models and knowledge work search that we've built in, but it's easily searchable. We can convey in human words what our employees have to do and what they can do, and we take iterative feedback. Now, imagine expanding that throughout controls, through cloud engineering, identity management, being very simple, still being able to accomplish your goals. And I still have the same friendly conversation with my friends at the Department of Insurance that visit me all the time, right? We have the same fun conversation and accomplish the same goals, right? We're not lessening the efficacy of the program. It can be done. We need to get out of this, right? There are better ways of moving the cart forward. We don't have to be stuck in how we've continuously moved and evolved programs, because it is not impossible. You can move that forward. A lot of our teams continue to do that, right? We continue to put 2 or 3 times as effort, but it creates drag, right? We don't get to move as fast as we want. So things like cyber risk, it changes daily. And that by itself can derail us, right? There was an article that I was reading earlier this morning with a wonderful Cisco exploit that teams are scrambling to patch, right? And that happens all the time, right, with lots of different vendors and softwares. But we get very much committed to those past choices. And sometimes that can be a really good thing, right? I'll give you a good example about how that's a really good thing, right? For those of us that have found a significant other and have married them, you don't want to wake up every morning and say, did I make the right choice? So commitment is great. Like when you find a commitment and you've made a commitment, a lot of times that's great. But at work, in information security, you set a strategy, you set standard work and direction, and you have to ask yourself, did I do the right thing? And is this set up to support where my team, our customers, and our organization truly needs to be? Or did I set it up because NIST CSF said to set it up like this, right? Did I download a template from NYDFS that says go forth and do that? Like, they're entirely different things. We don't want to be committed to the wrong past decisions because they need to be in our interest, they need to be in our company's interest and our partner's interest, and we need to understand those different viewpoints. So shifting from that bias, where we think we're grounded in a safe world, to data-driven decision-making means we just got to be aware, right? Try to bring down the blinders. Implement some better structured processes, foster a culture of innovation, entrepreneurship that values evidence, less so in intuition. So we want to educate our teams on common biases like anchoring and availability. I'm not saying we have to go out and become psychology experts and say, hey, did you know that just by doing that, you're trying to suck me into the availability bias and I'm not going to have it? Have a nice day. No. We just want to move towards a path where we're defining clear and objective metrics. Not that we want to kill people with data, because there are folks that don't respond well to data, right? Because they think that we're just overwhelming them with information. But using data and information in a way that explains how we came to our decision and recommendation, and that we've attempted to think about all the different variables. Do you agree with this approach and methodology, or is there something else that you can add to help us make a better decision? Because this is truly what I feel is in the best, the best interest of our organization and our customers. We need to standardize those decision-making processes. Do you know how fast we move when we just talk about doing something? We don't move. We actually go backwards. When we began rolling out several versions of Gen AI, we didn't just sit on it and say, well, let's get perfect on evaluating the models and the tools. Did we get perfect on, are we aligning with every single state regulatory agency? Because the fun fact in the insurance world is we have a boss in every state, right? It varies. There's now, and for those of you that deal with privacy, that's the same world too, right? You have bosses in all these different jurisdictions. But guess what? If you move forward with the standard set of guardrails and you align on those minimum requirements up front, that's a subset of what you eventually need to figure out, and you agree on the working norms on how to evolve and move the program forward, and you expand that out to different disciplines or divisions throughout your organization, you can actually keep moving, right? The progress and the path forward is just a series of very small baby steps in the right direction, right? You want to be able to make more correct decisions more than stupid decisions at the end of the day. That's going to allow you and your team to move forward. And throughout that, you want to encourage regular hypothesis testing and regular reviews. And what I mean by that is when forming judgments and assumptions, you're going to change your mind, and that's okay. We're never going to get it right out of the gate. That's why our whatever we design for security assurance and controls and our standards, they need to be adaptive. We need to be able to have a feedback cycle. And you also, lastly, need to promote that culture of transparency and accountability. I know nothing's perfect in my program, but we've taken the next steps to start publishing scorecard and health data on how we're operating on our team. We started looking at cost efficiency ratios on how much we're spending on our OpEx and human capital, and then articulating the value that we're delivering from it, right? I want to make that transparent to the organization, not just because I want folks to know how proud I am of my team and what we're executing, but I want to call up others in the organization to start thinking about that as well and how we're working towards some of the same goals. We also got to think about the upside of irrationality. We talked a lot about the negatives of irrationality, how difficult it is, but there's a lot of positives that irrational behaviors can benefit us. Let's take an example that we can relate to, right? Happiness. We all want to be happy, right? Come on, everybody wants to be happy, right? Happiness is a solid goal, but it means many different things to all of us, right? It can make a big difference, especially when you ground it in logical methods. I mean, some of you might get happiness by watching your favorite football team win, right? Saturday or Sunday, depending on if you're college or professional. Some of you might get your biggest happiness in the morning when you have peace and quiet, having that cup of coffee. Yeah. It's probably the only time where, the alerts and the emails aren't going. So happiness means so many different things, but that's also where that irrationality on how we achieve happiness might go against what the economists say and how we maximize our time and effort. But you got to personalize it, just like you need to personalize your programs at work. And to hammer the point home, I think I copy and paste Bruce Schneier into every one of my presentations because he nailed it decades ago. That if you think technology can solve your security problems, you really don't understand what we're doing. And that's all we've been talking about today. It's all about the human element. Not that, humans are the biggest weak links in our programs. I actually think the opposite. I think they're our biggest force and our biggest underutilized human capital opportunity to accelerate our security programs. So again, let's reapply irrationality again and talk about how we reset some anchors. And let's focus on things like human motivation. Okay, think a minute. I'm going to actually give you an exercise here you can practice by yourself. No need to say it out loud, but you can just practice here yourself. Think about for a minute 3 things that you're most proudest in your life. Don't say them out loud. Just think about 3 things that you're the most proud of. Okay, now think. How many of those were accompanied by moments of joy? Okay. How many of those then were also accompanied by moments of tears or agony or complexity versus joy? Okay. In general, people think about this and they say, you know what? Most of the time, the biggest moments so far in my life that I'm proud of were not just moments of laughter and joy. It could have been something that caused you tears, anxiety, frustration, and complexity. Some examples of that, like starting a company, that sounds exhilarating, but my gosh, entrepreneurship is something else, right? For those of you who have not done something either on the side or started a business, you really don't have much laughter unless you're just laughing at a giant mistake that you made and how you're going to fix it. And that's usually followed by a bunch of tears and pulling your hair out. Writing a book, that can be joyous. Having kids, I cried tears of joy when my daughter was born. Sometimes I don't know if my tears today are tears of joy or tears of pain of being told that, Dad, I don't need you anymore, right? Many of these are difficult, complex, painful, right? Some of these are equivalent to what we think of mentally of hiking Mount Everest over sitting on a beach and drinking mojitos or, whatever your drink of choice is. Human motivation is incredibly irrational because we find joy in growth in the most painful and difficult times. Now, let's relate that for your success strategies in the information security program a little bit. We just acknowledged a little bit that a lot of our biggest successes in life came from trials, tribulations, putting in a lot of time and effort. That same applies to how we build the relationships and evolve the programs in our day-to-day. The satisfaction, the improvement, the efficiencies that you will unlock are all rooted in how much effort you put in on accomplishing the right goal. Another thing, we love things that are complex and difficult. We wouldn't be in information security without them, right? We also like running marathons, but we also like helping people. You know, there's a wide variety of things that we do that are both very painful, and some people would say, why the heck are you doing that? When I go running over my lunch, I do get odd looks going, Rob, why the heck are you doing that? Why don't you just unplug and relax? But for me, it's about setting goals. And when you dig in, you think about motivation, you realize we said, yes, it's not entirely rational. Motivation is riddled with biases. So when we try to solve our biases and feelings, we get inconsistent results, just like how we get motivated in all different ways. So let's convert this to how we overcome these risk perceptions and biases. Let's think about this. So fairness is a good example. So fairness and how we ask folks to accomplish tasks matter. That matters. Feeling proud about accomplishments matter. Calling out failures is not popular and is usually not a motivator. Being connected and feeling connected matters a lot. You know, let's also tie this into the love you might have for your significant other. That's a good example. Let's say I wanted to ask you how much you love that significant other. Eventually, the love that you feel, the best evidence that I'm ever going to get is how much you feel right now. It's not like how many emojis or DMs you're sending throughout the day, how many snaps you're sending. Is that, hopefully I'm still using the right terminology, the snaps and the Snapchat. It's not how many TikToks you send. The same thing's true about pain. If I wanted to understand your pain, it's subjective. You know, one of my least favorite questions going to the doctor's office is when they give you the smiley face chart and they're like, where's your pain? Is it like a 1? Is it a 10? And if you try to say, no, it's a 15, they tell you that you're full of it, and they say, point to a smiley face on there. Like, if you feel you're being treated unfairly, I don't care if an objective metric shows that you're being treated fairly. So going back to data and metrics, when we start presenting metrics and we start correcting risk perceptions, if we've put in all the blood, sweat, and tears and the hard work to align on a different path towards either getting more efficient at vuln management or getting better at security hygiene and shifting left, at the same time, you don't want to show data and say, you just failed. You got 99 out of 100 and you missed this one because your infrastructure as code didn't update. No. The fairness in the ask is, hey, you updated your process. Fantastic job. We have a couple of areas. Can you help me understand how we missed this, right? So it's not how you feel today. You might be very angry as a professional. Like, hey, we agreed upon this new process. You missed it. Now you're causing me some unplanned work. We got to recognize the positives and double down on those positives. And from resolving security program velocity, I really do care what you all feel. I care what my peers feel. And that's how we need to build into our conversations with others, that I care about what you're dealing with. And it's okay to say that. You got to empathize with folks. It's not so much as, hey, have you been through this before? How are your kids doing? Those are all great, but I really care how this is affecting your day-to-day. But this is how we're going to accomplish it and move forward. Behavioral economics tools like behavioral nudges and framing techniques can all work in this wonderful world. I actually think these are the best techniques, more than any other product or platform you can buy, to accelerate your security program, because it's not what you say, it's how you say it, it's how you tee up information over time, and allow that to foster and manifest itself throughout your entire program, that you can lay it on top of the business outcomes you're trying to achieve that are rooted in your goals for the year, design your controls and processes from the inside out, so knowing what you're trying to achieve, not just bolting on what somebody tells you from a template, making sure that you have the awareness and rebuild that culture. We want to make sure we're communicating just differently as well. So are we using clear information and lingo, short backgrounds and opportunities and problems, a list of considerations, trying to eliminate that bias up front a little bit? Leading with security by design is not just a technical requirement that says, yeah, I got to do security by design. It is, hey, we're going to align on a framework and some principles that we're going to operate upon. We may not be perfect during this sprint or during this effort or project. And at the end, we're going to have a retro and identify how that we're going to improve that over time. You're always moving the bar forward, but you also never want to move the bar so much that you're making it difficult to get work done. That's the key, too, in every organization that you'll have to figure out and flow through. So, in conclusion, my biggest takeaway today is you have everything you need to do the work with. It's up here. It's free. At the same time, don't make decisions like they'll be entertainment or that you're trying to get a rise out of others, right? You don't want to blame others for the outcomes. I know some of you might need to plug in this image into your search engines if you don't recognize Jerry Springer. But his show was where you went for disagreements, irrationality, blaming others, and yelling. We need to get away from that. If there's that one idea going forward, it's designed for trust and relationships, not just for controls. If you design your program with just security controls in mind, you're going to miss the big picture. That's what it comes down to. You want to move away from that reactive firefighting to that resilient, relevant, and proactive program. And I hope if you take one thing away today, it's that and trying to apply that in one of your upcoming and new efforts. With that, I'll conclude and can take any questions. Got one in the back. Thank you, brave soul.
I really like your message on Simplify. I think that's a really great key where you took 30 policies and then brought it down to one. I've never heard of that before. And I think that's an amazing goal for everybody to think about, because now you're being honest and it's something that people can attach to. But any other thoughts on that?
Yeah. If your goal is to simplify an effort like that, buckle up and get prepared for some very hard, tough conversations. Because even when you get your team on board, you have to go get the human resources folks on board. You got to get risk management on board. You got to get legal on board for what you're going down, because they're going to take you in the opposite approach, where you have to be wordy, cover for every scenario and situation. You want to make sure that you're reducing your liability as much as possible. So it took us almost since I started at WoodmenLife about 15, 16 months ago. This was one of my first asks that it was way too complex. It took us 15, 16 months to get to where we are now to get ready to publish. So it was a long time coming. So if you think it's something that's going to be quick and overnight, it resulted out of many, many conversations. So I appreciate the question and the kind words. Got a question up here.
I love your concept about relationship building, because we have gotten into, over the years, it's technology, and it's not. It is relationships. You're so, and our table decided a 4-day cruise to the Bahamas would be a great relationship building.
Do you got room in the cabin, or
we can make it work? Yeah. But what a great concept, because with all the things that are going on, it is the brains, all of our brains, that has to connect all of this technology or get rid of some of the technology that is legacy systems and those kinds of things. So thank you for sharing that.
No, really appreciate it. Yeah, a lot of times it almost seems backwards, right, to what we've gotten in the mold of doing. And I know it seems counterintuitive. You've probably heard the notion that do less to move faster or go slower to move faster, and it really does work. it just takes some trial and error up front and how you make that shift. And it can be very uncomfortable and scratchy at first, but you do tend to build up faster velocity by focusing on less at a time and moving slower and doubling down on the relationships. I did not print off any honorary degrees today. Maybe I should have too. Maybe that would have, like psychology or behavioral economics degrees, but next time I'll print off some and I can hand them out to everybody. Any questions online? Okay. Well, I'll be hanging around, in and around. If you see me, you want to catch up, feel free to hunt me down. Also, if you come up to me like, Rob, that was great, but this did not make sense, or you need to fix this, please tell me that too, because I try to keep this reworked and re-updated. So if there's something that you also disagree with, I'd love to have a conversation. I always love a debate. So I tell the team here at FutureCon that I'm only an expert in one thing, and that's my opinion. So well, thank you again, and enjoy the rest of the conference.